Welcome to the weekend edition of Second City Sports Zoom Style,
Zoom style.
along with my co-host, founder, and creator of Second City Sports Radio Show and podcast, Miss Lakeena McGee. I am Sydney Brown. You can follow yours truly on Twitter and Instagram at SidKid80. Once again, at SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80. You can listen to Second City Sports along with our other podcast programming from We Are Regal Radio, wherever you download your podcast, including the iHeartRadio. Download the iHeartRadio app. Just type in War on Anchor. You can access this program along with others as well.
You follow me at Keena McGee on the Twitter, at Keena_McGee on the Instagram. And don't forget, you can also follow our show on YouTube, War on Anchor on YouTube. So subscribe.
All right. Our top story for this hour is social unrest reeks its ugly head again, and our athletes are protesting and postponing games, I should say. We will welcome in Chicago sports broadcaster and anchor and reporter. You enjoyed her work on NBC Sports Chicago for many years. We welcome in the lovely and talented and our favorite homegirl, Miss Leila Rahimi. You can follow her on social media at Leila Rahimi. Once again, at Leila Rahimi. Leila, welcome to the program. How are you today?
Sid, I don't even know what to say after that intro. I am not just flattered, but I appreciate being on for sure. Thanks, you guys.
Oh, we're happy to have you with us, Leila. Thanks for doing this.
Yes, and thank you, Keena. I really appreciate it.
As of this broadcast, the NBA playoffs have been put on hold in the bubble in Orlando. The Major League Baseball has postponed 10 games over the last couple of days. The NHL Stanley Cup playoffs in Canada has been postponed the last couple of days as well. Back on Memorial Day, the murder of George Floyd sparked protests throughout the world, and our athletes joined in on that protest as well. Last Sunday, Kenosha, Wisconsin, Jacob Blake was brutally murdered with 7 shots by the cops. This time, as I mentioned, the athletes have protested and stopped games as of this broadcast. Leila, I want to get your initial thoughts. What is your take on these professional athletes, in particular the NBA players who sparked this protest and trying to get people's attention to call for action for racial justice?
Well, I think this isn't anything new that we've seen. In fact, if I recall, right before the bubble happened, Kyrie Irving was making statements asking if we should even do this. And he wasn't the only one asking that question either. And we've heard a lot of athletes say that they feel isolated in the bubble. Unfortunately, that was kind of the idea. But when it comes to knowing that they can make a difference, and in the NBA, we've seen that they know they can. I think there's a lot of players who wanted to be outside of it right now and being there for their team and respectfully, not just being there for their teammates, but also being there for the people who are hurting with them. We've seen such compassionate answers, and I don't have to tell you guys, it's my privilege to listen. People are hurting. And if we can't listen to them, especially when they work so hard to have these platforms and to know how to use them responsibly and to give back, I think that we're doing a huge disservice. So to me, it comes down to the element of human compassion. Athletes talk all the time about giving back, and we see it whether it's in charity events, we see it when they're on the streets with people, we see it when they're listening to people, or just simply trying to help their families who have helped them get to the point that they're at. And to me, it just speaks to the fact that what they're feeling is significant, and they want to do more because they know they can do more. And I recommend everybody watch the report. I actually retweeted it a few days ago from Zora Stevenson, who I think does a great job in Milwaukee. She is the Bucks courtside reporter. And she talked about the decisions that they had made, which is really what started this. And rightfully so, since it was the Milwaukee team after Jacob Blake was shot 7 times. So to me, that said a lot about the perspective, the feeling, the compassion, and I don't know. I don't know how else to say. If people refuse to hear thousands of people who are in their living rooms with them day in and day out and provide a line of support for them, if you just want to watch a game that night and you want to get away from your life, keep in mind that they have lives too. If you don't want to hear them, I don't know what else to tell you. We're humans first. Our jobs are second.
And to add what you just said, Layla, I mean, again, this was, a video that, that was circulated all over social media. This guy being shot 7 times. Now he's paralyzed. And now he's, his dad said he's now handcuffed. I mean, unfortunately, look, the three of us, we're all minorities. We know, unfortunately, what it's like to go through discrimination and be and everything else in between. And so, like you said, Layla, the athletes are humans first. And we heard Tom Herman, the Texas football coach, says, look, if you want respect, and we talked about this, during this whole thing, Sid, if you want to respect these guys on the field, you need to respect them off the field too, because this is who they are. And I think it's unfortunate that, there are still people who feel like, well, their lives don't matter, they just shut up and drivel, as they say, and, throw touchdowns or whatever. And it's unfortunate, but I'm glad that people are now listening. You're hearing about all this that has transpired these last couple of days. If I would implore everybody to read the Baltimore Ravens Twitter account and that great linear statement, because it tells you about, yes, we're upset, but this is what we're going to do to kind of help, start the change, doing things in their community, getting people in Baltimore and in the state of Maryland to register and on Maryland and everything else. We're going to go to Washington because they're kind of right there in DC. So they're going to try and perhaps maybe make change. And I think all teams are copying it. You hear what Cliff Kingsbury said in the conversations he had with his dad. I implore people to look up those comments as well. And a great stand by Ryan Tannehill with the Titans. Excuse me. So it's good that people are listening, but I think that what's the end game here? We've been saying that voting in your state and local levels, that's where it all starts. So, and I'm glad that it seems like these teams are taking it a step further. Sid?
I would agree with that. And even I've talked about maybe like a month ago, the idea of meaningful change on one of our NBC Sports Chicago Facebook shows. And of course, this guy in the comments says meaningful change, ? And it's just, it's that level of retort that we just, what we're talking about.
I want to ask you, Leila, about another Pro Football Hall of Famer. His name is Brian Erlac, of course, former Chicago Bear. He has some opinions about the situation, and it didn't go over so well with many people. He tried to bring up Jacob Blake's past and athletes in particular protesting against that. Why would you protest against a person who has a record bringing up his past? Me personally, I kind of found it interesting, but I was shaking my head to say the least. What were your thoughts about Brian Urlacher's comments?
Well, Brian Erlacher made sure to compare Brett Favre's father dying to the situation going on where athletes want to sit out. And those are two completely different things. So to me, that falls under the level of false equivalence. And what I found interesting was that Lance Briggs ends up trending on Twitter in light of Brian Urlacher's comments, and a lot of people talking about how much they appreciated Lance Briggs. I'm for that credit. I'm for somebody else getting credit when somebody makes a statement that people don't disagree with. But then again, I worked with Lance, so maybe that has something to do with it. But to me, again, it just goes back to the idea that these are two totally different things. Also, I don't know if everybody forgot 10th grade civics class, but last time I checked, that's not how procedure works. A judge and your peers, if you're in a state that sentences people to whatever the maximum extent of the law is, they decide, and then you have appeals. So I find this all fascinating that people have completely forgotten history and how this really works. But I don't know. I mean, to me, it's just a level of sadness, right? And we see it pointed out more in different ways. Brett Favre voluntarily playing after his father passed away was Brett Favre's decision. And this also is a team decision that these teams and players are making.
And also, Erlacher has a black son. So you would think he would know better and he would have these conversations with his son, because unfortunately he's going to be, or look, we've heard it from various people. Look, all the white coaches and white athletes have said, look, I don't know what it's like to to have be stopped or what have you because of the color of my skin. I'll never experience that. Even Ryan Tannehill, and if you heard his statements with the Titans yesterday, is that look, I have kids, I don't have to have that conversation with them. And I want to know what Erlacher's the son is African American. I want to see how his son feels about it. I know I don't know how old he is, but I want to know how does he feel that his dad is saying these sort of tone deaf things. It's just surprising and disappointing at the same time.
Well, we saw that used in the Republican National Convention as well when the speakers talked about essentially racially profiling her own child. And she was a white woman talking about her son who is a minority. So that doesn't tend to stop people, I think, speaking from their individual experience.
Leila Rahimi, sports reporter and anchor, is joining us here on Second City Sports Zoom style, along with Lakeena McGee. I am Sydney Brown. Leila, let's start with the Southsiders, the Chicago White Sox. They are 19-12, and they have a big 3-game series at home against the Kansas City Royals this weekend before heading out on the road next week at Minnesota. They won 9 out of the last 10 games. Lucas Giolito pitches his first career no-hitter on Tuesday against the Pittsburgh Pirates. What is your thoughts about the Sox destined for the playoffs, or they still have work to do?
Oh, I think the Sox are trying to go for it because we got the news this morning that they traded for Jared Dyson, the center fielder for the Kansas City Royals. And I'm assuming that is to give Luis Robert, Eloy Jimenez, and Nomar Mazara some outfield help. Now, we saw Adam Engel make a great grab off of Giolito in that final out as far as his no-hitter was concerned. But I don't think any team, especially with how short the season is, trades for somebody unless there's a significant reason. Now, we have yet to see, at least at the time that this is taped, what the Sox are giving up in return. But I definitely think that they are thinking playoffs if they were able to get Jared Dyson from the Kansas City Royals. And thusly, Kansas City seems to be giving up what's left of their, I don't know, like the first generation players, the players maybe they acquired right when they started doing this rebuild. So we know that Kansas City will be even less of a threat in the AL Central. But when it comes to the White Sox, I think we're seeing them finally come together. I don't care what anybody says. We used to say it had to do with whether or not a player started a season fast or not, but I think we're seeing now it's maybe not just weather, it's just getting into game shape, knowing that you need to be ready at a certain time and your body just doesn't always get there when it comes to timing and trying to hit the baseball. And they're giving the pitchers the run support, and I think that was a big part of why you saw Giolito so comfortable, was because when both aspects of the team are clicking the way they are, you don't have a pressure on the other side, whether it's pitching, defense, trying to support an offense that isn't performing as much or vice versa. And that's why I think Giolito partially had the mindset that he could throw what he needed to throw and take that risk maybe in order to get the job done.
And I like the fact that, look, nothing's gonna change because they're going to be those that are going to say, well, it's a shortened season, so what Giolito did shouldn't count. I mean, come on. I mean, the guy threw a no-hitter, was one walk away from having a perfect game. So I think people need to just give. And Giolito has been consistently, improving a lot in the last couple of years. So I think the guy should get his due. Come on now, everybody. It's just crazy what's the shortened season and this is a sprint to the finish. But look, I think this is a great move for the Sox getting Dyson. I mean, you don't have to worry about Eloy, diving into the stands, empty stands. I mean, I close my eyes every time. I get scared, okay, please don't mess up your face or break a wrist or something. I mean, I get very nervous. Sid knows this, Leila. I mean, I get very nervous when I see him on the field in outfield. So getting an experienced outfield like Dyson, I think can only help the Sox. And look, the AL Central's there for the taking. The Twins and the Indians have been struggling, so the is right there to take.
And I never thought I would say that. I do laugh. I mean, I don't want to say pray for Eloy and left, but we all know it's an adventure every time he's fielding. And he knows that. He has some fun with it. I remember, you remember the game last year in Houston where Giolito pitched arguably that time his best game of his career against that Astros team. And I forget what inning it was, but there's a fly to left field. There was no need, especially in that ballpark with the roof, for Eloy to have any trouble tracking that ball. But he took some crazy route. And then at the end, he slides on his knees and he catches it. And then he throws his hands up like this, like he's a gymnast. Because even he knows he's got to improve in the outfield. But I hope when he does, it doesn't take away his sense of humor. But yeah, I agree with you, Lakeena. I think I did not think we'd be sitting here saying that at one point during this week, the White Sox were going to be the team leading the American League in home runs. I thought that was the Twins title. But no, your White Sox came to play ball. They led the league in American home runs the day that Lucas Giolito threw the no-hitter. And I don't care what anybody says, I agree with you. If it's a 9-inning real game with real players, then it counts.
There you go. I want to ask you about Luis Robert, Leila. Me personally, I think he's your front runner for AL Rookie of the Year. We've seen he had his struggles a little bit here and there, but that's what happens when you're a first-year player. How better can he get to? I know some people want to compare him to Mike Trout, and some others want to compare him to other Hall of Famers. How better do you think can he get in center field for the White Sox?
Well, Mike Trout is a heck of a comparison, right? That's generational talent. I think Luis Robert does deserve Rookie of the Year because when you see the at-bats he puts together and frankly how he does play in center, I think he's got the big body and the speed and he really makes it work for him. He's a really, really good center fielder. And Ozzie Guillen doesn't like comparing players, but Ozzie always said that Luis Robert reminded him of Andrew Jones. And he thinks that Luis Robert's going to get physically even bigger because he's still so young. But the thing that impresses me the most, Sydney and Lakeena, about Luis Robert isn't just what he's doing in the outfield. And he is crucial to that White Sox defensive runs saved metric in the outfield. But it's also how his pitch selection is so good, even though he's so young. We've seen him hit anything, but he knows when to hit it in the right counts. And yeah, there's going to be a little bit of a sophomore slump there, and he might be going through it right now, even though it's his rookie season. We saw that with Eloy Jimenez too. But I think the sky is the limit for him, especially when it comes to the fact that he's got the just baseball IQ that everybody talks about that's so huge. But that pitch selection is only going to get better and better. And that swing is already so good. And I really like him working with Frank Menechino. I think there's something to that.
How about the pitching, Leila? Because we know Giolito's good. Dallas Keuchel has been a huge pickup for them. What about the back end? Dylan Cease has been doing very well. Gonzalez has been up and down. Do you think the White Sox have a pitching to go far in the playoffs?
Well, that's the real worry, right? Because you think about who we thought they would have at the beginning of this season, especially at the time it started. Carlos Rodon was on that list, and I'd have taken Carlos Rodon as a number 4 or 5 starter on this team for sure, given that he was the ace at some point. And then you had Reynaldo Lopez, who we're trying to see what happens with him. So I love that Cease is really pitching well. And Gio Gonzalez, for his credit, I think you know what you're getting with him. You know that he can be wild at times, but he also is getting the job done. And I think there's something to be said for that as well. You can stretch it a little bit in this shortened season, but if you're going to get the outings that you're getting from Keuchel, Cease, and Giolito, you really can't complain about your top 3 starters. Dylan Cease's improvement to me is a big, big deal. And we should probably appreciate that a little bit more. Giolito and Keuchel are getting all the publicity, but the fact that Cease is starting to really improve is a huge step in the right direction for him. It's a shame that Rodon and Lopez can't play right now, and I just really wanted to see them because then you're talking about if everybody's healthy, that's not a bad place to be in, especially when you have Gio Gonzalez too.
Let's switch over to the north side, Leila, and talk about the Chicago Cubs. They're hanging on for dear life in the NL Central in first place. They lost 2 out of 3 to the White Sox last weekend. They had their struggles early this week. at Detroit against the Tigers. If you had a letter grade to give first-year manager David Ross, what would it be and why?
I think it's at least a B, right? Because he's gotten out of his own way, even though I don't know that David Ross is ever in his own way. But as far as the whole rookie perception and all of that, I think he's gotten out of the way of that for sure. And so many times recently in baseball, we've seen rookie managers, Gabe Kapler comes to mind, making crazy decisions. And you're not seeing any of that out of David Ross. You're not seeing these wild decisions being made in game. It's almost an afterthought. And that means that he's making the right decisions. So to me, I like what Ross is doing, especially when you consider the first month of the season and how the Cubs came out of the gate prepared. I think that's something that everybody seemed to agree on, was that the Cubs' level of preparation, whether it was from virus protocol, the at-bats, to managing the rotation, to even trying to figure out the bullpen, which is really an Achilles heel that I don't know has to do a lot with him specifically. I don't think it does hardly at all. But they came in so prepared that I think it's really, really helped them. But the Cubs have been a streaky offense, and we knew that, guys. We've known that for a long time. And I think that the NL Central underachieved a little bit the first month of the season. The Reds had a ton of acquisitions. We wanted to see how that went. The Brewers, we know what they were going to bring to the table. Not the same team we saw before, but still a team that should be reckoned with and respected. And then additionally, we knew the Cardinals were going to be better because guys were getting healthy. So at one point recently, the Cubs were the only team above 500 to begin the month. I think it was August 10th. The Cubs were the only team to begin, or at least be in early August, above 500 in their respective division. Lakeena, you're trying to say something. I'm sorry. This is the Zoom edition, and I didn't even see your pointing. My bad.
No. I was agreeing with you. I was agreeing with you, actually. So keep going.
No, yeah. Usually, you know how, like, if somebody points to you, I'm like, oh, I got to get out of the way.
No.
When everybody talks, you know what I'm saying? But yeah. So, okay. So you agree. What are you thinking, too?
Look, I think the Cubs are they're still 3 games up. So I think, look, I mean, luckily for them, the other teams are struggling. So I think that's what really helped. That's really kind of keep the Cubs afloat. You know, they've had their struggles, but everybody else in the division has had their struggles too. So I think, look, I mean, I don't think Theo is going to be able to make any big moves. You know, they basically, the Ricketts family's already said that, look, we're tapped out, we're done. So I don't know. Do you think they need like an extra bullpen arm, or maybe try to shore up, that starting rotation, or maybe an extra bat if they can?
Yeah, I mean, in ideal dream world where money isn't a problem, you absolutely get another left-handed reliever. Yes, but I don't know that they've got the flexibility to make that happen. So I don't know. It's a curious situation for the Cubs to be in, but I feel like we were talking about them needing relievers last season too, even after Kimbrel. So I don't know.
Leila Rahimi, sports anchor and reporter, joined us here on Second City Sports Zoom style, along with Lakeena McGee. I am Sydney Brown. Leila, let's go back to basketball. The Chicago Bulls, they have new management now with AK heading up in charge of Mark Eversley as the GM. Currently, they're searching for a new head coach. What do you think about these changes for the Bulls? If you're a Bulls fan, does this give you new hope, or do you sit back with skepticism and say, we've been down this road before, and I don't know if things are going to change this time? What are your thoughts?
Oh, man, I hope you're excited if you're a Bulls fan, because they went outside of the organization, which is something they have not categorically done, not only to find their general manager, but now their head coach too. So I think everybody was waiting to see whether or not this was a sincere rebuild. And I think if Jim Boylan had stayed, you're looking at a lot of fans saying, this isn't really a rebuild, which is something that fans have complained about for a long time. And I don't even know if complain is the right word. I would just say observed, because how can you say something is an earnest switch in direction if there are still people from inside the organization there? And I know that Paxson is still there, but I think the role that he's taken on is different. So you can't really count that, because you're seeing in practice AK get that power to make the decisions he needs to make. I wonder if they held on to Boylan for too long, given that coaches are already being interviewed by people, but then again, the only real movement you saw was Tibbs going to the Knicks. So they still have some time. It's a shame that Nate McMillan has already said he's taking a break, because I wonder how he would fit in if he were the coach of that Chicago Bulls team, especially veteran coach. You know, he's going to earn the respect of everybody in that locker room. And he also can grow young talents like Kobe White, Daniel Gafford, and then Wendell Carter Jr. too. But they get the 4th overall pick, which is super exciting, even though this draft, a lot of people are not bullish on, pun intended. It's still, I know, but everything is still a step in the right direction. It remains to be seen who the head coach is going to be for this team. But the one thing that seems to bear out is the consistency that you know they're going to do their due diligence. And that is a stark contrast from what we've seen as far as how the Bulls seem to anoint their head coach before the other one has been let go. You know, they talk about the head coach waiting in the wings idea. And that's been something we've heard for many, 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 many years. And it goes back practically 20 years, if you think about it, in the style that they tend to do things in. So this is totally different. We're going to see them have a real, honest coaching search. And I think we're going to see that frame how they move this team ahead and forward. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't know that we won't see, with that 4th overall pick, some major trades happening. Because I think that might be the only way AK gets the roster flexibility that he might want with this team.
Well, because he said himself that this will be the highest that he's ever picked somebody at. So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if, I don't know how you feel, but I wouldn't be surprised if he trades back, maybe, trade a couple of pieces and maybe get more picks. I mean, what do you think, Sid?
All options are on the table if you're doing this rebuild correctly. And Sox, going reversing back to baseball for a minute, all the young talent that you're picking up, they're not going to be here by the time you win. So, like I said before, all options are on the table, and that I wouldn't be opposed to a trade if that's what he decides that he wants to do.
Yeah, I think the biggest contract, is Otto Porter. So I think that's where you start and you ask, how is he fitting onto this team? Especially since Otto, for his entire career, has had injury issues. So that's going to make him harder to move if you want to move him. But then again, maybe you get a coach who works with him and works with what the players are who are existing in there and try to make that situation work as well. I hate the idea of trading Zach LaVine. I hate it, especially now that there's going to be a new head coach. But that seems to be something that people keep throwing out there. Have you guys noticed that?
Yeah, there was this thing with the Knicks, for a couple of weeks back before Boylan got fired, and
oh yeah, where they were checking on him.
Yeah, that was that was the story. So I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of back and forth. I mean, but he's like really the one viable piece that you have, but you can build around. But then again, I can understand why. So him and Lurie, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if in a couple of years neither of them are here.
I don't want to think about that day. They both deserve better. I want to see how they do with the new head coach. I really do. And we've talked a lot about Larry Markkinen all season, guys. And I think one of the biggest pieces to all of this is I want to see him now that he's in a different offense and they're not pressuring him to get all these rebounds. Trying to make him more of a defensive forward, thinking that that's going to help his shooting if he goes coast to coast in transition. So I want to see how that changes. But they're keeping some of the assistants. But there were a lot of, in my opinion, capable assistants on that staff with a lot of experience. So I don't know that getting rid of them would have been a good idea either. It seems like AK kept them for a reason.
Let's head over to the gridiron, Leila. The Chicago Bears, less than 2 weeks away from starting the NFL season. Sounds strange to say, given that we didn't have any preseason games this year. But we all know that head coach Matt Nagy and GM Ryan Pace, they are hanging on for dear life, and it goes back to quarterback Mitchell Trubisky. What is your outlook for the Chicago Bears in 2020? Do you see them making a serious push for the playoffs, even though you have a third wild card spot this year, or does everybody just head out of town with their bags packed?
Yeah, that's a good question, right? So I think they hired 18 coaches in addition to the ones they had? No, I'm just kidding.
Yes.
Something like that, yeah.
Seriously, we got a passing game coordinator. We have an offensive coordinator. passing game coordinator sounds great when you're making 50 attempts a game, but come on, man, we need to see more out of the running game. And now there are concerns as far as A-Rob is concerned. So a quarterback's best insurance policy is a good running back, in my opinion. And when the best running back on the team is now dealing with an injury, that makes me even more nervous. And I'm nervous laughing right now thinking about this. So to me, I don't know if Trubisky lasts as long as we think he does. Everybody, as far as all the pundits are concerned, veterans, people of that nature, seem to be saying that Nick Foles probably ends this season as the starter. God willing, the NFL season ends. I want to keep that perspective here too. I did laugh, though, because the preseason situation really kind of worked into the Bears' favor. Because if you'll remember last year, they did not start anybody during the preseason. They're like, no, it's the preseason. We'll be fine. Like, here's the guys you've never heard of and Eddie Pinheiro to get some more reps. So to me, at least in this situation, it worked out retrospectively, but they wanted, if you'll remember, they wanted Trubisky to have reps this time during the preseason. They wanted that practice. Mm-hmm. So all of that says to me, it only all points to Nick Foles again. It points to a veteran quarterback needing to do what he needs to do on the field. So I don't know how long the leash is there or how long the rope is when it comes to Nick Foles and Mitch Trubisky, especially if the running back is injured for your team, because then to me that says, so now they're left with what? 2 pass-catching running backs, essentially, and which, okay, we all know you're going to pass the ball. So, to me, until you get that situation figured out, I just don't think it works in Mitch's favor. I would love nothing more than to see Trubisky relax, right? Get to hand off the ball 2 times, at least out of a 3-down set, and then he only has to make 1 pass, and I think that would do a lot for him. I don't know if Matt Nagy would like it because that simplifies the offense to a level he doesn't probably want to talk about. But I would just love to see Trubisky get that simplified offense that he unfortunately has needed to grow into that role. But I don't know, man. When Nick Foles is there and you know what he can do with a team out of a backup role to lead the Eagles to win the Super Bowl against the Patriots, for goodness sake, and he did get paid for a reason in Jacksonville. I just don't know how you come away with this saying Mitch is still the quarterback, even like 5 weeks in.
Are you in that mindset where, depending on who starts the Bears record-wise, will it be a big, drop-off? Because I've heard some people say that, well, if Foles ends up starting, it's going to be like 9 or 10 games. If Mitch ends up starting the whole season, it's going to be like 5, 6, or 7 wins. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it goes back to kind of what we talked about with baseball, where everybody said, if you have a bad week, then you're in a totally different position than you thought you were. And I would argue that the White Sox kind of proved people wrong in that respect because they didn't have the best week. They started 1-4 and then moved to 2-5. So I think the same thing happens in football, especially in a season where you don't know how long it's really going to be. The question becomes, again, like how much room for error do you have there? So do you pull Mitch after 1 bad game? Do you pull him after 2 bad games? Like, they have a plan, because I always think if we're thinking about it, then they're thinking about it. So we're not going to get the answer until we see it happen in practice. But I just don't know how you're saying we don't have a lot of games. We might not have a lot of games potentially this season. Does it really mean something to us? And are they looking to really make the playoffs this year? That's my other question. I think anytime you still have Khalil Mack and Akeem Hicks, you'd better be trying to make the playoffs. But then it's like, okay, do you want to go for it all like early on? Or do you want to give Trubisky his due? And, if you'll remember before all this started, guys, they were saying they wanted to give Mitch his chance and have ample time when the season started. So the question becomes, how much did all of this affect that plan, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The running back situation concerns me. That's it. That's really it. I don't know if that's going to hurt Trubisky, in my opinion.
Let's head over to the Bears defense. There's been reports that Khalil Mack is in the best shape of his life. He's gearing up to have a big year. Of course, his plays suffered last year due to to the injury of Akeem Hicks. So what do you expect out of Mr. Mack for 2020, assuming that he and the Bears defensive unit stay healthy?
Well, first of all, did you see where Pro Football Focus ranked him as far as their top players? I love Pro Football Focus, and I was sad when I saw their rankings.
Yeah.
They had him way too low. To me, Khalil Mack, if he's healthy, he's in the top 10 in the NFL. He's a top 10 NFL player. He's not just all pro. He's top 10. So I'm looking forward to seeing Khalil Mack hopefully work through some of his respective injuries and get out there and do his thing. But yeah, Mack and Akeem Hicks together, if you like any defense at all, that is the best tandem to watch right now because they work so well in concert together. And also, guys, what about the fact that this is Chuck Pagano's second season as a defensive coordinator? I don't know about you guys, but to me, there were some times where we're saying, oh, Chuck Pagano's got this great defensive scheme. And I think he is a good DC, but Vic Fangio really had a good defensive scheme with this group. And I saw things like the Lions effectively moving the ball pretty easily down the field with a backup quarterback. We saw Teddy Bridgewater last season carve up the Bears defense. So to me, I want to see how the scheme fits all together as well before we figure out with the players that they have, because we all know that's an issue too, before we say this is an Akeem Hicks or a Khalil Mack issue.
Be very interesting, no doubt, considering the NFC North as a whole. Leila, where do you think the Bears finish? I know you like making predictions, but
you know, I think the question comes down to the Vikings, right? Because if the Vikings are any good, you're talking about potentially the Vikings going 11-5. The other question is, do you think that the Packers season last year was lucky, or do you think that it was legitimate? We all know what their plan was as far as the Bears were concerned. Make Mitch Trubisky play quarterback. We heard about that for the rest of the season. But do you think that the Packers are a playoff team? And I don't know. I tend to think that there's some dissension going on as far as personnel in Green Bay. We're hearing Aaron Rodgers. Of course, they draft a quarterback early in the draft. So I don't know if I don't know that Green Bay necessarily walks into the playoffs like they did last season. So if they don't, Vegas has the Bears wins and losses set at 8.5, right? So they're at 8.5, 7.5 losses. So Vegas is thinking they're a 500 team. If they're 9-7, do they make the playoffs? That's the question to me. And in the NFC, that's dicey. That's going to take you down to the wire. So if a 9-7 Bears team probably doesn't make the playoffs, even in this expanded format. Just my opinion. So I'm thinking maybe they have to win 10 games in order to make the playoffs. And Detroit's gotten better too, by the way.
Yeah.
I think they had an excellent draft.
Yeah,
I don't think you can just chalk up Detroit as 2 losses anymore for the opposing team.
It's going to be tough.
Heading down the home stretch with Leila Rahimi right here on Second City Sports Zoom style, along with Lakeena McGee. I am Sydney Brown. Leila, I want to ask you a quick question about college football. Breaking news right now: the Big Ten is thinking about starting their season on Thanksgiving weekend. The other 3 power conferences are scheduled to start their season later in the month of September. What are your thoughts about this?
Well, does this mean that the Nebraska families got something they wanted? Is that the idea?
Right.
I don't know. I have to laugh a little bit at that. I was covering the University of Texas when Nebraska was opting out of the Big 12, so a little sense of humor there. I think really what this means is the Big Ten is trying to figure out a way to make it work, not just financially, but also thinking about next season. Because if you have 2 football seasons in a single year, there is so much groupthink on that is just detrimental to players. And logistically, that would be so hard as well. So I think they're trying to push up the start date because they're trying to figure out how to prevent, or at least get as much time as possible in between this season and next season, because if next season starts on time, and I think you already concede spring football in this model, then you're looking at a very short amount of time in between the season and the following season. You're probably looking at a couple of months, and I don't think that's enough for anybody to recover.
It's gonna be very tough. So I mean, do you think that they end up finishing the season, these conferences? I mean, you see some of the smaller conferences who are trying to do what the ACC, Big 12, and SEC are trying to do. Do you think they finish?
I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine, because if you look at the numbers for positive tests, when we've seen a lot of data reporting change as far as how it's being reported, if you look at the numbers for positive tests regarding viruses, the numbers for college aren't good. You're seeing everybody crowd into stands together to watch high school football games in a lot of these states. You're seeing people get together. So you saw also North Carolina's Dean of Health and Sciences say we need an off-ramp because it's too much of a risk. I don't trust a lot of adults to do the right thing right now. I sure don't trust college kids to.
Yeah.
So I just don't know if that piece of it is to me a science question and a behavior question. Does everybody behave right? Are you lucky? And it really comes down to luck sometimes in these situations as to whether or not you can finish it. You can buy yourself some time. You can come up with plans and change the plans as you see fit because you have the technology. But it's anybody's guess. And frankly, when it comes to behavior, we've seen games get taken away for other reasons that are also legitimate that do not have to do with this virus right now.
We're going to end this interview later with a fun question for you. I know that you're also a frequent guest of the Lawrence Holmes Show on 670 The Score in Chicago as the quote-unquote monthly visitor. I remember listening to one of those shows last year, and I know you're a big hip-hop fan. I'm an old-school hip-hop fan. And you can spit a little rhymes in here too, a little bit. I got a proposal for you if you're interested. A little fun proposal. You want to hear it?
Yeah, let's get it straight. I cannot flow. I have to listen to somebody else's lyric and then repeat it. You know what I mean?
You can flow a little bit. Don't shortchange yourself.
Flow is an art form. I'm not that good.
Well, we're gonna have. I'll make this proposal anyway. Next time you come on our show, we'll do a little friendly rap battle. You pick a couple of songs. I'll pick a couple of songs. I know you new school. I'm old school. Here's my proposal. Are you down for it?
I am down for it, but I would also like to say, should we do it the way that like Snoop and who did Snoop battle? It wasn't
DMX.
Yes. Should we do it the way Snoop and DMX did it, where like you get to have bathroom breaks, and, like you just play a song and everybody's like, oh, I didn't know he was gonna come out with that song. That was my favorite part about it. Was like we all knew those songs. And then everybody would just be like, oh, we broke out that song. And it's like, we know the song. Like,
I can't wait for the Brandy Monaco one. I mean, there have been like you can make those things however you want. So I'm staying out of the that realm. But yeah, I pay for admission for that.
Yeah, I would definitely. I mean, I will fire up my DJ iPod over here and see what I can do. Or else is it memorizing and then just spitting bars? Like, what is the challenge? Like, I got off on a tangent there, but what is the challenge?
Well, we'll work it out if you agree to do it. We'll work it out. We'll have some fun with it. So
I love this idea. I'm gonna get the baddest virtual background and like get my cup and maybe I dance a little. Like I did love seeing that too. Did you guys not like seeing like all the places where everybody was DJing from?
Yeah.
I'm like,
yeah,
oh my God,
it's so much fun.
You have a club in your house. Like
Yes.
I knew it.
Yes. It's without leaving your house. You get to go to the club without leaving your house. You got virtual clubbing. I love it.
Yeah, D-Nice started the best trend when it came to all of that, in my opinion. Which one did you guys like the best? What was your favorite battle?
Ooh. Probably, like I said, I'll probably give it a little bit to D-Nice. That's just my opinion. Just like I said, because he started also, I'll have to go with D-Nice.
D-Nice, but the DMX Snoop battle, I think it was a lot better than a lot of people thought, because people forget how many hits that DMX had. We just thought that maybe he's had a couple of hits, but he actually has a lot of really solid ones.
Yeah, DMX seems to have as many hits as he has kids.
Yeah.
Did you know
Oh yeah.
Like, all of a sudden everybody's like, wait, how many kids does DMX have?
Right?
Where does this come from?
Yeah, I'm about to say, wait, huh? Oh, okay. I won't say anything.
Yeah, I really, yeah, I loved him. But you know, the original DJ battle was Hot 97 like years ago. It was Swiss
Yeah.
Success Plays. That
Yeah.
I want that rematch.
Yeah.
That's the one I really want to see.
Yes.
But yeah, D-Nice is the originator. He deserves all the credit
Oh,
here.
yeah. Definitely
That would
good.
be
Not here.
T-Pain's was really good too.
Oh, yeah, well, that was good. That was really good. Yeah.
I think my favorite part about the T-Pain was he sounded exactly like he sounds all the time.
Yes. he doesn't, yeah, he doesn't like, adjust his voice or anything like that. He sounds exactly like he does when he's in his interview. So it's crazy.
Which I was not expecting because of the auto-tune. And then I'm like, wait, was the auto-tune created by T-Pain or was T-Pain created by the auto-tune? I could go
He was
on.
created by the auto-tune.
Yeah, probably.
We all could use some auto-tune, that's for sure.
Oh, of course.
This was fun.
All right.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right. That was Leila Rahimi, Chicago anchor and sports reporter. You can follow her on social media at Leila Rahimi. Once again, Leila Rahimi. Leila, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. We enjoyed your work on NBC Sports Chicago throughout the years. Best of luck to you in the future. We're definitely going to have you back on this program again down the line. And let's see if we can work on that friendly rap battle behind the scenes. Hopefully we can get that taken care of.
Or at least my amateur DJ moment. I mean, that's all we're trying to do.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's what about me.
Tapes all
Let's
around.
get it.
Oh, thanks, guys. This is a lot of fun. I'm glad we got to make it work.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right,
Thanks,
Leila,
Leila.
take care.
Be safe.
Thanks. Thanks, guys. This was fun.
Yes.
All right, take care.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.
That was fun, Lakeena.
Yes,
This is what we do here on Second City Sports Zoom style. We bring you the personalities that you respect, you want to hear from, and we have a little fun too. Of course, a lot of fun. Not should say a little. We have a lot of fun, and if you don't like that, something's wrong with you.
Yeah. I'll say, who doesn't like fun, right, Sid? I mean, come on.
Exactly.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back. We'll have Sox pre- and post-game host and former Chicago Bulls pre- and post-game host Mark Schanowski join us in just a few minutes. So stay right there. This is Second City Sports Zoom style.
Zoom style. Okay. Welcome back to Second City Sports Zoom style.
Zoom style.
Along with Lakeena McGee, I am Sydney Brown. You can follow yours truly on Twitter at SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80. Where can people follow you, Lakeena?
You can follow me at Keena McGee on Twitter and at Keena_McGee on the Instagram.
And joining us this second segment is Mark Schanowski. He's the pre- and post-game host for White Sox baseball on WGN Radio. He's also a Chicago broadcast, rural and Bulls expert. Mark, welcome to the program. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you two doing?
We're doing good. We're excited.
Yeah, we're doing just fine. Doing just fine. Breaking news: the NBA has been their players in the bubble has been in protest in regards to the shooting in Wisconsin from last weekend. The NBA playoffs will resume on Saturday. Mark, I want to get your thoughts of what are your impressions of the Milwaukee Bucks and the other players in the bubble protesting and for injustice and racial equality? What are your thoughts about that? What's been transpiring these last couple of days?
Well, I think the NBA players have made a very strong statement. Originally when the bubble idea was talked about, one of the reasons why some players were a little bit hesitant about going down to Orlando was the fact that they wanted to make sure that social justice stayed in the forefront of discussion around this country. And I think the fact that the Milwaukee Bucks initiated the action not to play on Wednesday and then the other teams followed suit where all the games were canceled sends a strong message throughout the country that, these athletes care a lot more than just about winning basketball games. They care about what's going on in their communities and around the country. And they made it very clear to the NBA owners, to Commissioner Adam Silver, and to political leaders that they're not just going to sit back and be quiet. They want to make sure that there are practical things being done in the communities to try to help the quality of life.
You look at what the Bucks did. You can see why. You can understand why they did it because unfortunately the latest incident happened in Kenosha, not too far from Milwaukee,
Right.
and then everything sort of snowballed. Do you think the kind of the messaging here is coming across even more so now than it was just a couple of months ago when the George Floyd killing happened?
Yeah, I think unfortunately, this incident was so horrible. It just again brought all of those emotions back, and I think at this point, a number of athletes with a good platform said we've had enough, and they decided to make a strong statement. All the professional sports leagues in one way or another have joined in with the NBA has led. And I think it's going to send a message to political leaders that it's time to take practical action. It's not just time for talking. Something has to be done to stop this senseless violence.
Okay. We all know that the NBA is a progressive league, and they're usually the leaders in terms of change for the whole league. What are your thoughts about the other professional leagues, Major League Baseball and the MLS, are following? So what were your thoughts about them joining the NBA players on this pause?
Yeah, I think all the sports leagues saw what the NBA was doing and decided that it was time to make a strong statement that this is the time now to take action. And I think that we've seen that with Major League Baseball. We've seen it with the National Hockey League. We've seen it with Major League Soccer. We've seen it with the WNBA. This is a universal statement by athletes that we want our voices to be heard.
Now, let's talk about some of what the MLB did. We saw with the Marlins and the Mets, with their sort of kind of like walking out, if you will, and then you saw what Jason Hayward and Mookie Betts and what all the other Black players did. As far as the Cubs are concerned, do you think that maybe some people are saying that more should have been done? Should the team have done more to sort of like in solidarity with Hayward and and all that?
Well, unfortunately, that particular day, the Cubs were like the first game that was scheduled to be played. And Jason Hayward decided very shortly before game time that he was not going to participate. So the Cubs put out a new lineup, and they had a team meeting. And Jason Hayward basically told his teammates, I appreciate all your support. I'm going to sit out, but I encourage you all to play. So, Jed Hoyer, the Cubs general manager, mentioned that had they had more time to sit down and really talk it through, they may have decided not to play that game. And as the day progressed, more games were canceled. But I think the Cubs were one of the first games out of the chute that night, and I think they just didn't have enough time to decide exactly what they wanted to do. Jason Hayward is one of the most popular players in that Cubs clubhouse, and I know that he had the full support of his teammates. It was just a question of the logistics of that particular situation. It really wasn't a question of the players not supporting Jason in his decision.
Speaking of baseball, the Chicago White Sox, the team that you cover on the radio, Mark, their last game was Wednesday afternoon against the Pittsburgh Pirates. Of course, they had the day off on Thursday. As of right now, they're scheduled to play the Kansas City Royals on the south side for a 3-game series. Do you expect them to protest? Have you heard anything what the White Sox may or may not do?
There's been no indication that there are going to be any postponements around Major League Baseball. As you know, today is celebration of Jackie Robinson Day, which was originally done on April 15th every year, celebrating him breaking the color barrier back in 1947. This is such a special day around baseball, especially to all the African-American players. I don't think we're going to see games being canceled in protest. I think the full schedule will be played tonight. I don't know that for sure, but as of this moment, there's been no indication that there's going to be cancellations of any games tonight.
Okay. Well, let's talk about stuff going on off the field. I mean, the White Sox are one of, if not the hottest team in Major League Baseball. They're right there in the AL Central. It's right there for the taking. Mm-hmm. That pitching, the back end of that rotation, though, Mark, still kind of worries me. Does it worry you?
Yeah, a little bit. And Monday is the trading deadline. So if they're going to make a move to try to solidify that, they're going to have to go out in the marketplace and decide if they want to trade some of their prospects in this strangest of all seasons to try to make a run at a championship. The playoff field has been expanded to 16 teams, which means basically anybody could win it. It's not like a lot of years where you kind of know who's likely to make it to the World Series. This year, basically any team could win it. And I know Rick Hahn is a guy that's very aggressive as a general manager. It would not surprise me in the least if they go out and try to add another starting pitcher. They made a minor move today, getting Gerard Dyson from the Pirates. He's a guy who can do some pinch running. And, you know, that kind of move is made with the playoffs in mind. When you get a guy with that kind of speed, you're thinking maybe he can steal a base in the 7th or 8th inning of a playoff game and help us advance. So they're definitely thinking playoffs, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if Erlac decides to go out and get another starting pitcher on Monday.
And sticking with that starting pitching, Mark, Lucas Giolito earlier this week had his first career no-hitter in the 4-0 victory over the Pittsburgh Pirates. Talk to us about his performance. Were you obviously you were impressed by his performance because of the no-hitter, but what changes have you seen from early last year to this year? He looks like he wants to be one of the best pitchers in baseball.
Yeah, the bizarre thing about Giolito is that 2 years ago in 2018, he had the highest earned run average of any qualified starting pitcher in all of baseball, not just the American League. We're talking about the entire majors. So he was a guy who was kind of struggling, kind of floundering, trying to find his way. He's one of these players who's very analytical. He really thinks things through, kind of beats himself up when he has a bad performance and tries to pore over tape and find any kind of issues that he can try to improve on. Last year, he had a very good season, got off to a great start. He made the All-Star team at midseason and put up some really impressive numbers. And this year, he came back just wanting to improve on that. He never lost his confidence. He said after the no-hitter on Tuesday that he always thought that he had the ability to pitch a no-hitter in the major leagues. And, you know, he was so dominant in that game against the Pirates. The hardest hit ball was the last one of the game that was lined out to Adam Engel in right field. I mean, everybody had to hold their breath because off the bat, it looked like it was going to be a hit. But Giolito is just a great success story. He's the ace of that staff, and he's a team leader even at a young age. So I'm very impressed with what he's done to make himself into an all-star pitcher. And right now, he is the #1 guy on that staff.
Let's talk about the hitting for a second. I mean, Jose Abreu, I think he just hit another home run. I think just now. Tim Anderson, Luis Robert. I mean, just an amazing, hit streak and, one of the hottest bats in the major leagues. Do you think they can keep this up?
Yeah, I think they can. This reminds me a lot of what the Cubs did back in 2015, where they had a bunch of young players came up at the same time, and they all kind of rode the momentum of what the other guys were doing. Remember, they brought up guys at midseason. Chris Bryant came up after the first 10 days or so, and then you had Wilson Contreras and Addison Russell and Javi Baez, and all these young guys got hot together, and it was something to watch. And the White Sox are pretty much the same thing. They've got all these young players that are developing at the same time, and I think that they're kind of thriving off the success of one another. It's a team that leads the American League in home runs. Sometimes those home run numbers drop a little bit in the postseason when you only face the top starters on the other staff, but I don't see any reason why they can't continue to hit on into October.
On the other side, for the other young stars for the White Sox, Luis Robert in center field. He's having a great rookie season. He's my personal pick for AL Rookie of the Year. He's been compared to Mike Trout and some other Hall of Famers. How better can Luis Robert be? Do you see a future All-Star or maybe an MVP or two down the road for Mr. Robert, or are we jumping on the? Are we giving him too much credit too soon?
No, I think that he's got all the tools. They talk about a 5-tool player in baseball, and that's definitely what Luis Robert is. When you watch him play the outfield, he's one of the best defensive center fielders in all of baseball already at the age of 23. He can cover so much ground out there in center field. He can make spectacular plays, has a strong throwing arm. We've seen his power, which is really off the charts. I mean, he can drive the ball as far as anybody in baseball. I think as he gets more selective at the plate right now, I think he's #1 in baseball in terms of swing rate. He swings at just about everything, and that's a lot like Javi Baez was when he came up with the Cubs. He would swing at everything, which leads to a lot of strikeouts. Once he gets a better idea of the strike zone at the major league level, maybe takes a few walks and makes pitchers come to him a little bit, I think he'll be even more dangerous. But the sky's the limit for Robert.
What about Eloy? I don't know about you, Mark, but I've told Sid this. We had Leila Rahimi on just a while ago. I always freak out every time he's on the field because we know he can hit. We know he can drive in big runs. But every time I see him on the field, I think he always dives into the stands. As someone, I don't want to get to a point where he might break his face or break a wrist or something. Do you kind of freak out every time you see Eloy out on the field? And should he be a DH? So I think that's what my main question.
Well, I think their hope is because he's so young that you'd rather save that DH spot for somebody else and have him continue to play in left field. But I know that Rick Renteria kind of holds his breath every time there's a ball hit out there. I mean, he's landed in the net a couple of times that borders along the stands. He's crashed into the wall. You know, he is an adventure every time the ball's hit out the left field, but he's such a powerful offensive force. You know his bat is going to be in the lineup. But they're in a situation right now where they signed Edwin Encarnacion at an advanced stage just to be the everyday DH. So he's going to hold that spot for now. Don't know how long he'll be with the White Sox. So there could be a point at some point in the future where they look at the defense that Jimenez plays, and maybe they decide to make him a full-time DH. But for now, I think we're going to have to live with the adventure that he is on left field.
Mark Schanowski, pre- and post-game host for WGN Radio for the White Sox coverage, join us here on Second City Sports Zoom style. Mark, I want to ask you about Dylan Cease going back to that pitching rotation for the White Sox. I've noticed from last year to this year, last year when he came up, he was trying to strike everyone out. It was tough for him because he got through 5.5 innings over 100 pitches. This year, he looks to just to get the out and put the ball in play. Have you noticed that same difference?
He's been much more under control. You know, the walk rate is the big thing with Dylan Cease. Sometimes his pitch count will really jump up early in the game because he's trying, as you mentioned, to strike out everybody, and the pitch count will really jump, and he can only make it through 4 or 5 innings. He's been better about getting some strikes and some outs early in the count, which is only going to help him get deeper into games. You know, right now with Carlos Rodon still on the injured list and Reynaldo Lopez just coming back, they need Cease to be a strong number 3. I mean, if the playoffs started now, he would be your number 3 starter. So it's important that, you know, he's careful about his pitch count, throws a lot of strikes, and can get the White Sox deeper into games.
How big of a pickup was Dallas Keuchel?
Oh, huge. I mean, here's a guy that was a World Series champion with the Astros. He's always been a guy that ranks among the league leaders in ground ball rate, which means he's not going to have to get those high pitch counts. He can usually get you through 6 or 7 innings, gets a lot of ground ball outs, gets a lot of double plays. He's been very efficient. Every start he's pitched this year, he's been good. He's turned in quality starts every time. So to get a veteran like that to back up Giolito, any playoff series that you start, if you can begin a series, especially that first one, best of 3, with Giolito and Keuchel, you're going to feel pretty good about your chances.
Well, I'll I think we're having
mentioned the White Sox are 19 and 12 but they have a big series. We'll know for sure if the White Sox are for real in terms of making the playoffs for this season.
Yeah, I mean, I think we already can pencil them in. You know, when you look at the other teams that are competing for that wild card spot, there'll be 2 wild card spots after the top 6 in the American League. They have a huge lead in that category. Unless they had a rash of injuries or just a prolonged slump, I think the White Sox will definitely be in the playoffs. Right now, they're thinking, how high of a seeding can they get? You know, they're only a half game behind the Twins, tied with Cleveland for second place. It's a situation where if they can get the division and a better seed, maybe you get a more favorable first-round matchup. But, you know, in the best of 3 series in the first round, I think you can kind of throw out the seedings. It's going to be kind of who gets the good pitching in that best of 3 series. Those are the teams that are going to advance. But really, even though we're talking about late August, mentally, I've already got the White Sox in the postseason.
It's going to be a kind of like that first round is going to be kind of like a free for all. I think we can all agree on that. I'm going to go to the hardwood for a second, Mark. I mean, you covered the Bulls for many years. We know that Arturas Karnisovas, also Mark Eversley are now so the guys at the top for the Bulls. What route coaching wise do you think they go, and do you think that guys like Zach LaVine and Lauri Markkanen will be sort of like the building pieces long term?
Yeah, I mean, I think right now all options are on the table. Whenever you have a new front office come in, they have a different way of looking at things. Arturas Karnisovas came from Denver, where he was the second in command in their front office. Mark Eversley was the general manager with the Philadelphia 76ers. So they're going to take the experiences they had with those organizations and bring them to Chicago. I think that they've poured over the tape of all the games for the last couple of years, and they already have an early indication of what they think in terms of evaluating the roster. I don't know that they're going to make major changes this offseason. We don't know when the 2020-21 season is going to begin. So, you know, that could be January or February before they start the next season. So they're going to have plenty of time to evaluate the talent on the roster. The next move to make is who's going to be the head coach. And I would think, given the fact that they still have to pay the 2 years left on Jim Boylan's deal, I don't think they're going to go out and get one of the elite, let's say, coaches available on the market, guys with previous head coaching experience. I think it's more likely that they're going to hire someone who's a current assistant, and that would be someone who would be more in line with what the salary they're looking to pay out. So they're going to interview a lot of guys. Obviously, both of these front office guys have past connections that they're going to want to, take advantage of. We've heard the name Wes Unseld Jr., who is an assistant coach with the Denver Nuggets. That could be someone our tourist wants to talk about. Mark Eversley knows Ime Udoka, who's an assistant in Philadelphia, who spent 7 years under Greg Popovich. So those are a couple of the assistant names that we've heard so far. But given what we've seen so far from our tourists, I think he's going to be very deliberate, and he'll interview a lot of people, and hopefully he'll come up with the perfect guy to lead this team.
Assume that the Bulls do not trade the number 4 pick and they keep it, obviously. Me personally, I would like for them to select James Wiseman out of Memphis, but he'll probably be gone by then. But who are some of the other available players that the Bulls can select that number 4?
Well, the consensus right now is that the top 3 picks in some order will be Anthony Edwards, the shooting guard from Georgia, James Wiseman, who you mentioned, the center who only played 3 games at Memphis before leaving school because of eligibility concerns, and then LaMelo Ball, the famous Ball family, the 6'7" point guard who played professionally in Australia this year. That leaves you with the best wing players on the board, guys like Isaac Okoro, who's a defensive specialist from Auburn, who reminds me a lot of Jimmy Butler when he first came into the league out of Marquette. You have the young man from Israel, or playing in the Israeli league, Denny Avdija, who's a 6'9" small forward, who's a guy that can really handle the ball, who can run pick and roll. Maybe not the best shooter in the world, but he's a guy that a lot of scouts are high on. There's some point guards available. Tyrese Halliburton from Iowa State, a young man from France as well who's available. So named Killian Hayes. So there's a lot of guys that they could go for. I think what's going to happen, they're going to make a decision on whether they want to move down, whether they want to possibly move up in the draft order, and then they'll decide where they fall. I wouldn't be surprised if you see a trade leading up to draft night where maybe they move down 4 or 5 spots in the order, pick up a future draft pick, and maybe get the guy they want anyway at number 8 or 9.
It'll be very interesting. So keep up with the college hoops theme there, Mark. DePaul hired Dwayne Peavy, was at Kentucky for many years, helped get Coach Cal to go there. What do you think? What do you think he brings to the table, and can he kind of help sort of like match that DePaul men's hoops program?
Well, obviously, Kentucky's been one of the most successful programs in the country over the last couple of decades. And, with his experience coming in, he knows all about trying to win at the highest level in Division I college basketball. Even though DePaul made the move to the Big East and they play very tough competition in that conference, I think it's been, disappointing the fact that they haven't been able to finish higher. They've been near the bottom or at the bottom of the Big East just about every year. And when you consider being in a major market like Chicago and having the recruiting possibilities that exist, I think it's time for the program to take, a couple of steps up. And I think that's the focus right now, is to make them, first of all, more competitive in the Big East, and then hopefully to the point where they can compete nationally to get to the NCAA tournament on a regular basis and maybe make a deep run one of these years. It's a big job. It's something that's been talked about for a lot of years, is how to make DePaul basketball more successful. But, hopefully he's the right guy to bring them into a more competitive spot in the Big East.
Heading down the home stretch with Mark Schanowski of WGN Radio. He's the pre- and post-game host for White Sox baseball right here on Second City Sports Zoom style. Last question for me, Mark. Let's go back to basketball. Had the chance to watch The Last Dance, which premiered in late April, early May on ESPN. It was a great documentary. Let's be honest here. It was Michael Jordan's last dance, which should have been called. But I know you were around. You were around the team at that time, covering it, especially during that last season. I heard you on another interview. Yeah. You mentioned that those NBA entertainment cameras were around all the time. It was hard for you local reporters to get things done. Talk to us about that. What was your best memories from that season outside of them being Utah for that 6th championship?
It was quite a year. I mean, it started out with Jerry Krause basically just declaring that Phil Jackson wouldn't be back as head coach. And you knew that if Phil wasn't going to be back, there was a very good chance that both Michael and Scotty weren't going to return. So the season started with kind of that, storm cloud hanging over the whole team, knowing that this could be their last time together. And there was also an injury factor. Scottie Pippen was out after back surgery, and they just had a lot of issues where, you didn't know if they could make one more run at a title. But as the season wore on, they got stronger and stronger, and they went into the playoffs in a situation where the team was pretty united. And then they faced that very tough series with Indiana, which the Pacers took them to a Game 7 at the United Center, actually led in the fourth quarter of Game 7. And you were wondering, is this where it's going to end? So it was, the whole season was a very unique set of circumstances where even though you were following the basketball on a daily basis, you know, the larger story was out there that this great dynasty team could be broken up at the end of the year. A lot of players were tired of all the media attention, both locally and nationally. So there wasn't as much availability of players for interviews as we'd seen in past seasons. Michael Jordan wasn't available as much to the media as he had been in past years. So everyone was kind of wondering, how is this going to end? Were they going to get the one more title, and were they going to be able to extend it even further? But very quickly after they did win the championship, it became clear that there was no way Phil Jackson was going to return. And then, of course, as you remember, then the NBA went into a lockout, which kind of pushed things back even further. But ultimately, when they came back in January of 1999, it was a completely gutted team. You know, it was so funny that, you know, the PA announcer would always address now the starting lineup for your world champion Chicago Bulls. Yeah. And the team was so bad in '99 that after 5 or 6 games they stopped doing it because that wasn't the world champion Chicago Bulls. That was just 5 guys they rounded up off the street to comprise the roster.
Last one for me, Mark. Keeping up with that, do you think they could have won if everyone had kind of stayed together? Because there was, you know this because you've been here forever. I'm a big fan of your work. Do you think had they stayed together, do you think they would have won another one?
You know, I think that shortened season in 1999 would have played to their advantage because it was just a 50-game season, and that would have been able to keep a lot of the older players fresh, and I think that would have given them their best chance. You know, as it turned out, it was San Antonio against the Knicks for the championship that year. And, you know, the Knicks were one of the Bulls' top rivals during that time, and they had a good team, but they were also dealing with some aging players, you know, and Patrick Ewing and some of the others, where I think the Bulls might have been able to beat them and might have been able to get back to the finals. Yeah, I think given the lockout shortened season, they might have had a chance to win one more, but that's one of the great unknowns of all, what ifs of all of sports. Would they have been able to get that 7th title? We'll never know, but hearing Michael Jordan in The Last Dance, he certainly thought they could have.
Okay. Now, I promise you, Mark, this is the last question from me. You also do a podcast with Chicago legendary sports reporter David Schuster called the Sharpshooter Podcast. Tell us about that. How did that come about?
Yeah, both David and I, you know, are not working full-time anymore, so we just decided it'd be something we'd love to do. We're both very passionate about basketball. And, you know, he's one of those guys that whenever I would see him at the United Center or he'd come into the station to do Sports Talk Live, he'd stop at my desk and we'd sit there for 15, 20 minutes talking about the Bulls and the NBA. And since we both had some time free on our schedule, we decided, hey, why don't we go get together, put out this podcast for really, you know, diehard NBA fans and people who love the sport. And we've just started it back in late July. We're still trying to build a following. It's, as you mentioned, it's called Sharpshooters. It's on the Barroom Network, and it's available in all the places you can find your favorite podcasts, Apple and Spotify. And we hope people will check it out because it's a deep dive into all things NBA. We have some great guests. We've had Stacey King and Kendall Gill and Casey Johnson on, and we'll continue to line up good guests, you know, throughout this remainder of this playoff run and on into next season. So I appreciate you asking about it, and we hope people will check it out.
All right.
Great podcast.
Thank you.
All right. We will make sure to spread the word about that podcast and make sure you keep up the great work. That was Mark Schanowski, pre- and post-game host for the Chicago White Sox on WGN Radio, AM 720 here in Chicago. Mark, it was an honor and a pleasure for you to join us today. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule to join us. It really, truly has been a pleasure speaking with you. Keep up the great work. Let's hope the White Sox get into the playoffs. Let's do this again soon.
All right. Thank you very much for having me, and best of luck with your podcast as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Stay safe.
And stay safe.
Thank you. All right, you two. Thank you very much for having me on. I appreciate it.
No problem.
All right. We appreciate you.
All right. Take care.
You too.
You too.
All right. So long.
Oh,
that was Mark Schanowski of WGN Radio. He's the pre- and post-game host for the Chicago White Sox. And let's hope that the White Sox will get into the playoffs this year. If they do, we will bring him back to break down their opponent for the postseason.
It'd be so much fun if we get like a crosstown series. Look, it could happen the way this series is.
Uh-oh.
Yeah,
Are you putting it out there already, Lakeena?
hopefully. I'm not saying definitive. I'm covering myself here, Sid. You know that I don't like making these kind of predictions, but but look, I mean, we talked about this with Leila earlier. I mean, the Cubs, they're lucky that everyone else in their division have kind of had their struggles. So the fact that the Cubs are having their struggles, but yet so are the other teams in the division. So that's what that's kind of helping them sort of keeping their lead. I mean, like we've been saying, for the White Sox, the AL Central's there for the taking. The Twins have struggled. The Indians have struggled. So, yeah. So I think both our teams. I think both our teams have a good shot of getting into the playoffs and doing some damage.
Wouldn't that be interesting? Even though it's a short 60-game season, we have the expanded playoffs this year. Wouldn't it be great? I'm just stepping out of my White Sox fandom, if I can, for a minute. That the Cubs and Sox World Series will happen in this type of year, but with no fans.
It would be only fitting, right, Sid? and no one can be on the stands. I mean, I think maybe that's a good thing. Right. Who knows? But
folks will be doing stuff at their televisions and whoever wins the World Series, they can go out on the streets. Some of y'all will have masks on. A lot of you guys won't, blowing their horns and other kinds of other strange stuff. Like I said, it'll always be fitting, right?
Right. If it's on the strange stuff. But yeah. Right. I mean, look, we'll see. I mean, like you said, the trade deadline's on Monday, and we'll see if the White Sox make any more moves that the Cubs can make. Albeit it'll be a minor move, but we'll see if they make those kinds of moves, and other teams, what the Rays are going to do, what the Yankees are going to do. The Dodgers, they're pulling away from the West and the NL West, so it'll be interesting to see. I mean, in this climate and as strange this season is, will there be any big blockbuster trades? We'll just have to wait and see.
I don't think so. Only because. Given the money situation with Major League Baseball, because of course there are no fans in the stands this year, and you have less than a month to prove yourself. The regular season ends on September 27th. Heaven forbid other strange things could occur, but assuming that things are staying on the calm right now, the regular season will end on September 27th. It only gives you barely a month, because today, as of this recording, is the 28th, so technically less than a month away. So they have 29 days. So it'll be kind of hard to pull off a blockbuster trade. But I think you'll see a couple of minor moves here and there. Going back to the White Sox, I know there's been rumors that Lance Lynn could be acquired from the Texas Rangers. He would help that White Sox rotation, but call me crazy. I know Rodon should be back soon, but you may have to their pitcher rotation might have to stay as is.
Yeah, because he's.
And I don't think it'll be a bad thing. If you get Lance Lynn, so be it. But as of right now, I'll take this young starting rotation against anybody in the American League right now. This could only help them grow, not only just for this season, but for next year and the years to come as well.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I mean, like I said, it's gonna be interesting to see if people decide to make these big trading moves. I mean, I heard that the Braves is another team that's very interested in getting Lance Lynn. So, I mean, again, we'll see if that transpires. I mean, I think, like you said, the way everything's set up, it might be tough, but again, we'll see. Anything else baseball wise? Because I kind of feel like sort of like we're midway through the season. Everyone's sort of like trying to find their way, and then with everything that went on with the protests and the boycotts and stuff, I want to know what do you think about that? Because I know we had Leila on. She said that, and also Mark too. They said, look, it was a short, and I agree with them too, that this was it was short notice. There was. I think the Cubs and the Tigers game were going to start like at 20 minutes before all this started happening. So it was going to be hard for them to make a decision. So I'm fine with it. I mean, look, I think Hayward had to reiterate, say, look, I told them to go ahead and play, because I'm sure he had people say, well, how dare they? How could they do? Look, it was short notice. There was no way they could be able to pull it off. So I'm And look, if you saw David Ross's comments, I mean, he was in tears, with everything going on. Also, Anthony Rizzo, I mean, he was saying a lot of expletives. So I think people should just sort of calm down on, no, we should do this. It's just silly, right? What do you think, Sid?
Yeah, like you said, the players from the other sports were on short notice. As I mentioned, the White Sox had that game Wednesday. Of course, they had the day off on Thursday, so you can't blame the White Sox there. Now, as far as the other games were concerned, there were a lot of early afternoon games on Thursday, so you can't blame those players because it would have been hard for them to turn the switch on and off. So you can't blame them there for those games that were scheduled late into the evening or early evening on Thursday. They decided we're not going to play. I have no problem with that. And the Mets player who kneeled the other day, I had no problem with that either. We're going through a tough time in our country right now, and we in our it's a constitutional right to express yourself in any way, shape, or form, as long as it's not violent, of course. So you have a freedom, right to express yourself, freedom of speech, and I didn't have a problem with it. The NHL stopped their playoff action for Thursday, I believe for Friday as well. I think they'll resume on Saturday. As of this podcast is not official yet, but I'm assuming that they'll resume on Saturday, just like the NBA will resume their playoff games on Saturday. So I didn't have a problem with it. We're in a different time in our country right now, and you have people outside the sports world talking about it. This is what the athletes want. You wanted people to pay attention to what you're protesting about. Protest is to bring attention to the problem. It's not supposed to solve it right away. It doesn't work that way. Protest is just to bring attention to the problem, and you find realistic solutions from there forward.
I could have said it better. I mean, and I get, people are frustrated, people are angry, but it's listen, this is a marathon, not a sprint. And I feel like people think that, oh, well, snap your fingers, the laws will change. It doesn't work that way. And
Thank you.
You look at what the Ravens are doing. I'm sure you read their statements from last night, Sid. I mean, they're gonna have voting registration booths, and they're gonna send letters to Congress. I mean, they're not too far from DC, so they're gonna be doing some encouragement and such. And also, I just saw a tweet where I think Miami's gonna turn their arena into a voting registration thing for people there. So you're seeing these teams sort of like, okay, you know what more can we do? Can we? Yeah, we can march, we can protest, but long term, that's not going to help. So you got to actually work on changing the laws, getting people registered to vote, getting folks involved. And, every state, county, city, whatever, every law is different. So if you want to kind of, enact change, that's where it starts locally.
Yeah, as we said before on this podcast, Lakeena, it's about voting, registering to vote, and actually getting out to vote, and then keeping up with your politicians, whether you voted for them or not. The day after, like Roland Martin, TV host and journalist, always says, the work is not done on election day. You start work the day after, keeping up with your politicians on voting on what's the issues going on in Capitol Hill, and also all politics are local as well. We can focus in on Washington D.C., which we should, but all politics are local as well as where you live. So everything starts from the bottom to the top, and that's how it goes. Now back to these professional sports leagues. This is what we're talking about, Lakeena, not just walking the walk, but talking the talk, but walking the walk as well. I wish, hopefully, the teams in the Chicagoland area, I'm talking about the Blackhawks, the Bulls, the Bears, and the White Sox and Cubs, they can open up their practice facilities or their team facilities as voting registration booths as well. And that not only helps them, not just PR-wise, but it also provides service to your fan base and the people in the city and the communities as well.
You're right. I mean, now if there's anything I can add to that, because like you said, I mean, change starts from within. And like we've been saying, if you want real change, of course, yes, there's no such thing as a perfect candidate, but you need to sort of do your research on those particular candidates to see if they have similar, beliefs, if they have the same sort of issues, that you care about.
Yeah, as I said it before on this show, and I said it on the Dean Davis show, now the Davis show as of now. Cliff Kelly, now retired radio host and former alderman of Chicago, he said this before, and I'll repeat it. we, the citizens of the United States of America, we're their bosses, not the other way around. I'll repeat it again. We're their bosses, not the other way around, whether you voted for that particular candidate or not.
Couldn't have said it better, Sid. All right, so where do you want to? There's so many places we could go still. Yeah.
Let's go back to baseball for a minute. I'll just wrap up with this for the Chicago White Sox. I know they're playing the Kansas City Royals this weekend on the South Side before they head out on the road to face the Minnesota Twins for a big 3-game series next week. I'm going to put my Sox fan back hat on, even though I don't have one around yet. I'll say this. I'm not saying they're looking past the Kansas City Royals. You can't afford to, especially in this shortened 60-game season. But I'm really worried about the Minnesota Twins because even though I'm not going to say they caught them yet, but they're right on their heels. This is a big series for me personally because Minnesota has been the class of the AL Central for many years now. And you saw what they did last year, even though they failed in the playoffs. They continue in the same formula this year, but even though I'm not impressed by their starting pitching, their starting pitching hasn't been great, but it doesn't have to be right now because they're getting all the home runs, as we mentioned before. I think the White Sox will take care of business against Kansas City this weekend, but I want to see them in a tough 3-game series on the road against the team that you're trying to chase to take the next step to make it to the playoffs because their goal was coming to the season even before the pandemic hit. Their goal was, and they told the fans and they told the media, our goal is to take the next step to get to the playoffs. This is how you do it. To be the man, you got to beat the man, as Ric Flair once said. So Minnesota's there, staring in front of you. You got to face them head on. I want to see how they can compete against Minnesota and Cleveland. That they took care of Cleveland in their last series. I want to see how they fare against Minnesota because during opening weekend of the season, Minnesota made them look bad, beating them 2 out of 3 here in Chicago. If the White Sox want to be taken seriously, you have to beat the Twins head on. We said last weekend on the podcast that if the White Sox to be taken seriously as a winning team, they had to beat the Cubs. They did that. It should have been a sweep, but you take 2 out of 3 and you go on about your business, beating up on the bad teams. This is another scenario this weekend. You take care of business at home against Kansas City, and then you show up on the road against your biggest competition within the division. So I'm looking forward to see what the White Sox do within this upcoming week.
Should be interesting. Like I said, I mean, that's a big series. If just win the series. If you're not going to sweep, at least win the series if you're the White Sox, because
Yes.
you want to keep up with them, and you don't want to end up sort of like if you get swept by Minnesota, you're sort of like fighting for those wild card spots. So it'll be interesting to see where they go with that. Now, as for the Cubs, I mean, like I've been saying, the good thing for them is that the other teams in their division have struggled. They get the Reds.
Mm-hmm.
They get the Reds starting tonight as of this podcast of recording. So I'm hoping that they can kind of like distance themselves from some of those teams in that division because you've been lucky enough that you struggled, but yet everyone else has in your division. So that has helped you sort of confidence-wise. So hopefully they can kind of like put some distance between these teams because you don't want to give them any rope and any chance, to still be able to kind of overtake you because you don't want that. And this is sort of like their last dance. So.
Yeah, as we mentioned before earlier in this podcast, the White Sox and the Tigers have given the Cubs problems over the past week. Hopefully, if you're the Cubs, you can put this behind you and go beat up on the Cincinnati Reds. I know they were one of the picks by many experts to take that next step this year and perhaps maybe sneak into the playoffs. Like you said, Lakeena, if they want to put a distance between Cincinnati and St. Louis, you have to win your games, obviously, within your division because of the schedule this year. For the Cubs, you just have to take care of Cincinnati this weekend. And despite the injuries that they have right now and bullpen issues, they are still good enough to be a good team. I know they had the second best record, I believe, in the National League behind the Dodgers. So for the Cubs to stare them right in the face, you have to take care of business against Cincinnati this weekend.
All right, we'll see what both teams decide to do. NFL, it's sort of now we got the issue with the pumping and the crowd noise and such. I mean, we've
You don't say.
yeah. I mean, look. Like I said before, Joe Buck. We've been saying this. I think we said it like twice since it happened that he already kind of spilled the tea that the networks are going to do it, but apparently I guess the stadiums and the arenas themselves are going to be doing it. So the pumping and the crowd noise. I mean, I know people make jokes with the Chargers and the Falcons and all that, but I think the fact that you're going to be doing that, so it'll be interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, and I heard many people complain about will there be a home field advantage because as of this podcast, there'll be some cities that will allow a few amount of fans, and there'll be many cities, including here in Chicago, that won't allow fans as of now. And not just including Chicago, but Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and you mentioned Los Angeles with the Chargers and the LA Rams with their new arena this year. Of course, the Las Vegas Raiders, they have a new arena this year, moving out there from Oakland. As of right now, they won't have any fans. So it's going to be interesting to see how the NFL handles this, but it varies from state to state. I know as of right now, Kansas City opens the season less than 2 weeks from now against the Houston Texans. As of right now, they're supposed to allow only maybe 15,000, 16,000 fans in there. We'll see if that holds up. So it's going to be interesting to see how the NFL navigates through this, and obviously all these different states. If things improve, will they allow fans later on in the season in October, November, December as the weather turns? We shall see, but it's going to be one heck of a ride.
Yeah, because I think the Bears have already said that they're not going to be having fans in the stands. I think a couple other teams said the same thing. I think the Lions have said they're not going to have any fans either. And I think I saw somewhere that I think Washington, they're not going to have any fans. I think the first 2 or 3 games not going to have any fans. So as the weather turns, I mean, are we going to be seeing those fans, or is it going to be sort of like status quo? And also sideline wise, I mean, it's already been said that the sideline reporters will not be on the field. No, that doesn't mean that they'll probably be around, I guess the stadiums, in different parts. We'll see how they set up all that, but that's also going to be very interesting.
And we brought this up a few weeks ago, Lakeena, as we had on our colleagues, Deion Miller and Mark Grote, who travels with the team, who does the Bears sidelines for their network broadcast. How many people, as we all know now, the reporters won't be allowed on the field. Outside of the players in the officials, there's going to be a limited access. We worry about the NFL Films camera people crew as well. We know there's a bunch of them. Will all of them be allowed on the field on both sidelines for the teams, or will they be spread out, or will there be only a couple cameramen? So this is all going to be interesting.
And also, sorry guys, but no cheerleaders either. So will there be will they be around sort of the little barriers and you get to the sidelines? Is that gonna end up working? Will there not be any cheerleaders this year in some of these arenas and in stadiums? So it's all gonna look very different. Yes, we're gonna have football, but everything else is gonna be very different.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see what else. Let's talk about that Big Ten report that came out about a little while ago with they're mulling over a Thanksgiving start for their football. I mean, I'm trying to figure all this out here, Sid. I mean, I guess I don't know if they're trying to keep up with what the other conferences are going to do, because I haven't heard anything about the Pac-12. I mean, unfortunately, they've had to let go a lot of the people at their Pac-12 network, because there were no spring sports. Now we're not going to have fall sports for a while. And then you hear Clemson, they're going to have 25% of their fan capacity, and I see some of these other conferences are going to try and play. And then you have Nebraska, some of their players are filing a lawsuit. I mean, the whole thing is just I kind of just throw up my hands and just what.
I haven't read the report yet as we're recording this podcast. I glanced up at the TV next to me and I saw that breaking news, and we talked about it with Leila Rahimi earlier to get our thoughts, because the news was just breaking as we were recording this podcast. I wonder if the Big Ten has succumbed to the pressure from the parents and many of the players. I'm just wondering. Like I said, I haven't read the official report yet, the official story yet, so I'm just going by what was flashed on my TV screen. I wonder if the pressure was coming from both of those elements. I'm just thinking.
Well, also
We all know that
from
money's on the table as well, so obviously, so I
well,
wonder if the pressure from the parents and the players on social media had a big factor to do with this.
yeah, I mean, it's sort of like the priorities, right? These parents are
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, well, they have concussions, they have breaking their Achilles and stuff. Okay, well, you can spread germ. Those things are not contagious like COVID, and we're still trying to figure that out. So
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's insane, and hopefully we'll have somebody to talk, within these next week or two to kind of talk about this, because there are probably going to be more rebels than we are, but they did say that they could push it back to January, which was their original start date anyway. But like Leila said, it's going to be interesting because that's a short turnaround. So if you play in the spring, you got to go right back and play like in the fall. So that's sort of that's another thing that's going to have to think about. But again, if they have to kind of like compensate since they're not going to have any revenue coming in. So I see ESPN has released their schedule, and also Fox Sports released their schedules. I mean, like I said, more power
Mm-hmm.
to them. They can pull this off, but I don't think they'll be able to, because you see, like Alabama had like about 300 cases of COVID. I think a couple other schools had a lot of cases as well. So I don't know what's going to take. I mean, if God forbid a player dies, or if like a personnel person or a coach dies, I mean, I hope it doesn't come to that, but we'll just have to see.
Yeah, the issue is testing as well. How many times that your players are going to get tested? Will it be every day, every other day, every 2 days? Will it be tested on game day? As we reported on our last podcast, a false positive test. How are you going to deal with that? Should that issue come up with these players? Let's just say, for example, Trevor Lawrence, quarterback of Clemson. Let's just say he was tested the day before or 2 days before wherever they play, and he was tested positive, but it came back to be a false positive. Well, if it was a false positive, he should have played. And I wonder, will these conferences, how will they handle? Are they prepared to handle each situation? We just don't know. I don't know if they are. That's just me personally.
Well, and also you're talking about like testing these guys and gals, because these are women's
Mm-hmm.
sports involved as well. You're talking about testing them like 2-3 days a week. Like, do these schools can the schools afford to do that? That's probably why you saw a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the FCS schools deciding not to to postpone their starts till the spring, because they don't know if they'll be able to kind of accommodate that. And I mean, I'm at this point, I think this is why the NCAA should get more like criticism for this, because this could have been avoided. We can talk about all the political stuff and everything else, but
Yeah.
this should have been like uniformity. And I've been saying this, and I've been repeating this for like about 100 years, it seems. well, okay, 5 or 6 months technically, but
Mm-hmm.
it's just, it's just crazy. But I don't know.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Right. Let's see. There was something else I wanted to talk to you about before we break, because we're doing this early, so this is sort of like my clock's still a little bit off. But I'm hearing. Okay, we'll talk Bears for a second. You're seeing. We talked to Leila about this. You're seeing like all these sort of Zoom practices. We saw like, you mentioned, our good friends, Deion Miller and Mark Grody, they were there for the practices. Our other good friend, Caitlin Sharkey over at Fox Sports
Yes.
Chicago, she was there as well. And also Dan Weeder, Jeff Dickerson, among many others. They sort of kind of had their opinions on like, it's Foles, no, it's Trubisky, no, it's Foles, it's Trubisky. Like, okay, it's great, less filling, I don't know. But I mean, you're going by, I guess, you can't go by game film, because we're not going to have any preseason games to judge this on. So it'll be interesting if it isn't being Trubisky, what do you think is going to happen there? If he stinks, then you got to bring in Foles. It's just the whole thing is like, I really don't know what to think here.
The question is, how short is the rope for Trubisky? correct? Let's just say he has a terrible first half against the Lions on opening day, but he comes back in the second half, looks okay, but the defense has to win the game for the Bears. Okay, Trubisky didn't have a great overall performance, but the defense bailed him out to win the game. Now, fast forward to that whole opener. I don't know who it is for that following week because I don't have the schedule in front of me. But let's just say he has another bad game again, but the Bears barely win. Do you still stick with Trubisky or do you go with Nick Foles? That's the question that the Bears will have to answer now since we didn't have any preseason games this year. It's only so much you can do in practice.
Yeah. And you're not facing the top defenses in practice either. I mean, you are facing one in your own team, but outside of that, I mean, you're not facing Baltimore. You're not facing the Rams. You're not facing the Chiefs. You know, that's a pretty decent defense. And also their running back. I mean, David Montgomery, we talked about earlier with Leila. David Montgomery was going to be out for 2 to 4 weeks. And honestly, that's probably the best route because I guess it's better than the Achilles or an ACL because it was a non-contact injury. But those groin injuries can still linger. And I'm wondering, I think they had a lot of guys, but veteran running backs work out for them. But the whole thing is, it'll be interesting to see what they do if running back, cause I know Leila said that she was concerned about the running back. And you gotta think I am too, because you got, Tariq Cohen, but he's more of a pass catcher running back. So
yep.
I don't know what they do running back wise.
Do you remember back in January when we were back in our studio and we had Lester Wilfont on, friend of the program from Windy City Gridiron, and I asked him that question. And this is obviously before the draft. And he said just about the same thing, Tariq Cohen and Cordell Patterson, who filled in that role a little bit last year and during his last year with New England a couple of years ago because New England had various injuries to their star running backs, and he did an adequate job. The Chiefs are come home to roost now, and the Bears didn't see that as a top priority. They're looking at it now because, as you mentioned, David Montgomery thankfully will be out 2 to 4 weeks. Because when I saw the film via Twitter, I thought that he was going to be out for the year. I was like, if he's out for the year, the Bears are really going to be set back in terms of their offense because, as you said, Leila Rahimi said, our first guest, you are very predictable now because teams know what you're doing. If you're going to pass a majority of the time of every time, you're going to get beat. As the old saying goes, once that tape gets out on you, other teams can figure you out and they know how to stop you.
And also, yeah, I mean, and I think the Bears had the worst yards per carry last year, if I'm not mistaken, or at the very least they were in the middle of the pack at the very least. So you can't really depend on Allen Robinson and your receivers all the time. You're not going to be able to do that. And sometimes I think maybe Tariq Cohen should probably go back to being a running back because I think the pass catching he missed a lot of catches last year too, a lot of pivotal ones. So yeah, I mean you're going to need a good running back to kind of take the pressure off Trubisky, and if it ends up being Foles as well, is because he had his issues when he was in Jacksonville. But I don't know. It's going to be very interesting. Who has impressed you? I guess we got to go by impressions that we hear from various people who are covering these camps. I mean, we don't have any preseason games to sort of judge on, and like we've been saying, I mean, the first game of the season starts in less than 2 weeks, oddly enough. So, what do you think so far?
As I said before, all along, Mitchell Trubisky, barring injury, of course, he will be your starter September 13th at 12 noon at Detroit against the Lions. The question is, how long or how short is the rope for Trubisky? If he has a bad first half and comes back average in the second half, if the Bears win, will he be your starter, or does he stink it up on opening day and then they'll pull the hook, or will they give him 2 games, 3 games, or whatever before they decide to go with Nick Foles? Because as we mentioned before, head coach Matt Nagy's job is on the line and GM Ryan Pace's job is on the line. So how many games will it be? A half, couple of halves, a game and a half? We just don't know. It's all going to be interesting. But I still expect, barring injury, Trubisky will be your starter 2 weeks from now.
Yeah, I agree, and I think like I said, I mean, with all these stories, you got coming up, how is Brady gonna be against, with a new team. We're going to have him in a new team for the first time in almost 20 years. It's going to be interesting to see how he starts off with that, with the Bucks. And then and then we'll see how Baltimore, can they rebound after being, sort of after Derrick Henry ran all over him in their playoff game. Can the Chiefs, they've got everybody back. Can the Chiefs keep up? How's that going to play? It was basically essentially a contract year for him. So many stories. We'll see how in the NFC West, we'll see how that, because I think that division is there for the taking. So this is good. Look, this is going to be fun. And look, whether they finish, that's another thing we got to worry about. All right.
Yeah, I can't really wait till next week so we can dig down deep into the previews of these divisions, because it's going to be interesting this year.
Absolutely. Do you think Zach Ertz gets his contract? He saw his fellow other top two tight ends, George Kittle and Travis Kelce. They got their big contracts. Do you think he gets his? Sid? Oh, okay. Zach Ertz, there were some reports that came out about that they're talking about.
You would hope, because he's Carson Wentz is a go-to receiver, right? Because let's be honest here, the Philadelphia Eagles have been having problems with their wide receivers over the last few years. Because he's Carson Wentz is be honest here, the Philadelphia Eagles have to do due to lack of production and injuries. So Zach Carson Wentz over the past 3 or 4 years. So I'm up for him getting his money. He's been a consistent one there for even when Nick Foles was there when they won the Super Bowl 3 years ago. So Zach Ertz deserves all the money he can get. Take advantage of it. Hopefully this doesn't linger into the season, because they have a tough schedule and they got to compete with the likes of the Dallas Cowboys for that before even with the title in the East.
Yeah, absolutely. So I hope he does. He deserves it, because like you said, he's been, Wentz's top target. So I hope he does get his money, because I think he deserves it. He was one of the big reasons why they did win their Super Bowl a couple years ago. So I'm hoping Ertz gets his money, because he's earned it. Let's talk a little bit about the NBA once they do reconvene, because they are going to reconvene tomorrow. The Bucks and Orlando, do you think they finished their series? I'm assuming, I guess we haven't got the official final schedule yet, because everything had to be adjusted, but depending on I guess when everybody comes back, do you think the Bucks can finish up the Magic?
I think they will, because they're up 3-1, and of course Aaron Gordon, who has a hamstring injury for the Orlando Magic, he has left the bubble and he will not return. So I expect the Bucks to take care of business there. On the other side, I think the Lakers, they were up 3-1 in their series against the Portland Trail Blazers. Of course, Damian Lillard he is out because of a right knee injury. I'm assuming he's not coming back. So if that's the case, I think the Lakers will go ahead and finish out the Trailblazers in Game 5.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think, like I said, LeBron's on a mission. I think he's even going to be even more on a mission now. So I think Portland, we'll see if Carmelo can kind of he's getting older now, so I don't know if he'll be able to do it by himself. CJ McCollum needs to help him. Joseph Nurkic needs to help him as well. And I think the Lakers will end up finishing out this series, I believe. Now, let's talk about Houston and OKC. They're tied 2-2. What do you see that series?
I think if memory serves correct, I think I picked OKC in an upset. So they got back in the series by winning their last 2 games, even though they were, quote unquote, technically the home team. If Russell Westbrook comes back for Houston, I think they have this series. But OKC, if they win this next game, I have them taking the series. But Houston, they should have enough to win this series, but I just don't trust them. I just don't.
Yeah, well, the good news is that the Westbrook will be able to come back and play, so I think that should help them a little bit. But yeah, like I said, if this goes 7, I wouldn't be surprised. But it's going to be very interesting in that series, because I think that series is going to go down to the wire. The first round of the Eastern Conference Finals between Boston and Toronto. Let's preview a little bit of that.
These are the two teams that paid to challenge Milwaukee for the to represent the Eastern Conference in the NBA Finals. Too bad these teams had to face each other in the second round, but hey, this is what it is. For Toronto, let's see if Pascal Siakam can step it up a little bit more. Fred VanVleet, Rockford's very own, and Kyle Lowry. That's a good backcourt. I want to see how they match up against Kemba Walker and Jason Tatum. That's going to be a matchup there. So it's going to be a better series that I think people will give it credit for. But I'm really looking forward to this and Jason Tatum. But I think what this series will come down to is rebounding. Which team can rebound the ball the best? Whoever can do that on a consistent basis will win this series. I'm going to Boston. I don't think they can hang on to a well-balanced team like Toronto. They'll give them a run, but I think Toronto has a little bit of a better roster. So I'm going for the Raptors in 6.
That ankle of Kyle Lowry kind of concerns me just a little bit, just a tad, but I think they got a deep team. Toronto does. They're well coached, so I'm going to take Toronto in 6. Not having Gordon Hayward, I think that's going to be a big issue for the Celtics. I know Tatum and Jaylen Brown have been really good.
Good point.
They been really good for them, but I just don't. Not having Hayward, they're kind of like that extra insurance. That can hit the guy that can hit the 3. Not having that, I think that'll kind of like doom them, I believe. All right, Utah and Denver. We've seen like this duel between Jamal Murray and Donovan Mitchell. I mean, the Nuggets were able to win the last game. Do you think they can push this to 7?
I think Denver can push it to 7 because, as you mentioned, Jamal Murray has been stepping up these last couple of games. Nikolai Jokic has been playing well these last couple of games as well. So I'm personally rooting for Denver to push it to 7 games. I did have them winning this series originally, but it wouldn't surprise me if Utah won this series. They've been the better team, especially rebounding the basketball. On our last podcast, I brought it up. Denver has been having an issue of rebounding the basketball. Utah has controlled the paint while Denver hasn't, so it's going to still come down to that again. I'm expecting Denver to force it to a 7th game, and then it's going to be a free-for-all thereafter.
I hope it does, because I think this is a series that I think deserves to go 7.
Yeah, it's been very entertaining to watch.
Absolutely, and I don't doubt that. Dallas and the Clippers. I mean, the Clippers were able to. We'll see where their psyche is because they were all set to leave, but now they're able to, get back on track. Welcome to the playoffs, there, Paul George. But then, but then in the series, he did admit that he has been suffering from depression. I don't think he would make anything like that up. But
no.
Yeah, but do with it as you will. But I think the Clippers sort of like I think they're on kind of like on a mission. I think they'll do just enough to kind of hold off because Dallas is still not at full strength. You can kind of tell that ankle and that foot injury of Luka's is still bothering him.
Yeah, I think the question is how well is the ankle for Luka Doncic? Yeah, he has had an extra a day or 2 to get it right. It's not going to be 100% healthy. Will it be healthy enough to play? I expect them to play. Now, Kristaps Porzingis, will he be available to play? I'm not sure, but as I said before, I had the Clippers in 6. This series should end them way. But if Luka Doncic has another outstanding performance carrying the Mavericks, this will go to 7 games, and there will be a problem if you're a Clippers fan.
Yeah, for sure. I think if you're the Clippers, you want to try to end this series now and instead of letting it get pushed to Game 7 where everything is sort of up in the air. You don't want to push your luck, especially with Luka. He may have a good Game 7 in him. So if I were the Clippers, I think they would try to end this series now. Anything else?
I'm good for this week. We had a great show. Thanks to Leila Rahimi and Mark Schanowski from WGN Radio 720 here in Chicago. He does the pre and post game for the radio site for the Chicago White Sox. Did you have fun today? I know I did.
Oh yeah, it was a lot of fun. Layla was entertaining. Mark was great, as we all figured they would be. So, I
Yes.
mean, this is going to be a great show. We're going to have even more great shows coming up. Hopefully, we'll have even more guests talk about the news of the day. Both on and off. The field or ice or court or however what have you. But yeah, I mean, look, it's been a trying week again, but I think we're starting to see people be resilient and starting to see folks sort of wanting to make sure that we get long form change.
Yes, that's what it's all about. As you mentioned before, things take time. Nothing happens overnight, and we all have to do our part. I think Doris Burke, ESPN NBA analyst, said it best. We all expect our athletes to do certain things to help progress things forward because they have the clout, they have the personalities, they have the attention span for us fans to capture to do it. But the responsibility is on us as U.S. citizens to help along with the process. As I mentioned before, we're the bosses of these politicians. Is not the other way around. So we have to do our part as well. Celebrities and entertainers, we expect them to do all the work. That's not how this works. We all have to pitch in together because celebrities and entertainers that we all look up to, they're regular citizens once they get off the field and get from behind the camera. So there are people just like us when they step away from the workplace. So we all have to do our part, not just a few people.
Exactly. It's a collaborative effort for change. And I think that's the thing that needs to be said over and over again. And I know I hear people like praise Colin Kaepernick for what he did, but at the same time, though, he didn't vote. And that's the part that will never sit right with me. And y'all can do with it as you will.
On that note.
On that note, but you know what though? But I want to leave people laughing. So you got the BMW Championship going on this week. This is the second championship for the FedEx Cup. Also, congrats to Phil Mickelson. He won his first title on the Champions Tour. I have a feeling this is going to be first of many for Mr. Mickelson. I think he's got the game to do it, and I'm sure he'll probably win them. Maybe they're going to have like a couple of majors. They're going to have like the U.S. Senior Open, I think, later on next month about this time. So I'm sure he'll be ready. And oh my God, he's at the Champions Tour. Jesus Christ! Like you're feeling old now. If he's on the Champions Tour, you're feeling old at this point. So, oh my God. So, and I also want to commend Naomi Osaka, who's one of the top women's tennis players, for what she said. I mean, look, she said, "Look, I am a tennis player, but I'm also a Black woman. She is Black and Japanese." If you haven't had a chance, read her Instagram post. If you guys haven't had a chance to read it, it's very poignant, and there were also a lot of other similar posts. So if you got a chance, you'll feel inspired. Read it. All right. On that note, you can follow me at Keena McGee on Twitter, at Keena_McGee on the Instagram.
You can follow yours truly, SidKid80, on Twitter and Instagram at SidKid80. Once again, it's at SidKid80, SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80. You can read all of my articles at realregalradio.com. That's WEAREREGAL radio.com. And you can listen to this program along with all of our other podcast programs from We Are Regal Radio, wherever you download your podcast. That's Anchor, which kicks you over to Spotify, SoundCloud, every podcast platform. You can download War on Anchor. Also, we on iHeartRadio. Download the iHeartRadio app. Just type in War on Anchor in the search engine box. Type in WARR, the word on, and then the word anchor in the search engine box. Bada! We come up, so you can enjoy all of our content there, including this program and this show, Second City Sports.
And also, we're on YouTube, so make sure you go to YouTube, go on WARR space on Anchor, where you look at not only our faces for our show, but also the other shows that are on We Are Your Radio on Anchor. So subscribe and tell your friends. All right, so for Sid, I'm Lakeena.
And also like the page. Get them up, get them up, get them up.
Yep. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Subscribe
No,
and
I
like.
should say like the page and get the likes up.
Subscribe too. And tell your friends. So for Sid, I'm Lakeena. This has been Second City Sports Zoom style, and we'll see you on Monday with our buddy Jason.
See you next time. Holla!